Are we
There you
live?
go.
We are live. Hey, what's up, everybody?
So
I am.
exciting.
We're on YouTube and we're on Facebook now. So, woo!
Wow, that's awesome.
So this is chopping it up, and we are talking to JJ about social justice. So welcome. Happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be talking to you guys today, particularly around social justice.
I'm trying to figure out my camera situation here. I'm like, where do I sit?
This is so professional. I've never seen this, whatever program this is before.
Yeah, I think this is what Michael uses, and I'm not sure, but I started using it, and what I love about it is like the fact that it's not as choppy as Zoom a lot of times, and it looks so much more professional. Well, Jason, how are you,
Cool.
man?
Yeah.
Good. Sunday. It's cold in New York. JJ, where are you?
I'm in Chicago. Yeah.
So
yeah.
How's it?
And it's a little great in general, or good. Weather-wise, it's a little chilly too, which is kind of strange, but it's gonna, be nice. Just a couple of dips. And then just in general, great. I've lived here for 15 years, I think. I'm going on 15, 16 years. Yeah, I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa. Lived in Spain for a couple years, lived in Ecuador for a year, and then I've been here for 15. So this is definitely where I've spent the longest time.
Is that where Mara is?
Yeah.
In Chicago?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we've worked a bit together on for in one solution and stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's
cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
I would love to know what it's like living in Spain and some of those other countries from being from Texas.
Yeah. Well, first of all, my dad lives in Texas. I don't know if you remember that. So my dad lives in Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, most of the year. And then he's in Minnesota. But anyway, yeah. So, when ever since I can remember, I've been fascinated by other places, other cultures, other languages, people. I just even remember my earliest memory of like anything Spanish or Spain or Latin America related was tiny. I don't remember how old I was. And I went to the library with my mom, the public library. And I remember pulling out this book that said Spain on the top. And it was like a picture of a woman, like in a flamenco dress. And I was like, ooh. And I just remember like poring over that book. Anyway, and then throughout, just always was so interested in culture, people, language. Got really interested. And then in high school, I was taking Spanish class and all of that. And my high school teachers offered a trip to Spain. And I was like, going, so it was great. I went there. And then I remember thinking when I was in Madrid, like, oh, I'm coming back here. Like, this is, I'm not done with this yet, And then the same thing. And then when I was in college, I studied abroad in Sevilla, which is in the south of Spain. And I just remember, so to sort of bring this into 3P language and then about like the language of Spanish, I remember when I went to study abroad in Spain, thinking like, oh, I've been studying Spanish so long. I got this language down. I got this thing down. And then I got there and I was like, what? I could understand. I'm like, wait, what? I was living with the family and I just was like, And but I remember every day it was like went from intellectual into the bones, like every day I would get more and more language acquisition and it would get more and more where I didn't have to think about it anymore. And I just remember after a few months having a dream in Spanish and being like, whoa, like that was so cool, So I relate a lot of like, this is a little bit off the topic, but I relate a lot of like what we're studying about with the mind and, when it's intellectual versus sort of wisdom and getting in your bones and you just know it, to how I learned Spanish, because that's just to me an analogy that makes sense. But anyway, and then the same thing after my semester, I was like, no, I'm not done. Like I need to come back here. So after college, I figured out a way to get back, and I worked as a camp counselor at a military base in southern Spain for the summer. And that was my free plane ticket and my, job. And then at the end of the summer, instead of going home, I just went up to Madrid and looked for a job teaching English and found one. And then I was in Madrid for a year and a half, and it was the best, for sure, the best time of my life. And not just because it's not just because it was Spain. I mean, I loved it. I clearly love the country and everything it has to offer. But it was like I was living sort of day by day, like I was getting by and I didn't really worry about. So like, again, bringing it back to 3P stuff, I just kind of let myself be navigated to find a job, to find friends, to whatever. So it was terrific. And I taught English to both preschoolers and adults. And it was really fun. The adults just wanted to practice their English. And so it was really fun, and Madrid is kind of like a city to me that doesn't sleep. It's kind of like the New York, it doesn't sleep. I mean, it is so exciting. And particularly for someone who was 20, I was, 21 to 25 or, in those years or whatever. Yeah. It was amazing. It was amazing. And I feel like I learned so much both about the country and then like looking at different systems there going, oh, weird. Like, oh, not weird, but like, oh, that's how they do it here. And like and being able to compare to what the sort of conditioning that I grew up with, whether it was family, schools, social rules, the schedule of the day. And so it was really cool to be able to sort of have that internal experience of seeing a different perspective and seeing a different, oh, interesting, this is when they eat lunch, or this is how they eat lunch, or this is what they believe about nutrition, or whatever it was,
Yeah. So I know this about you, and we've not said this, but you are in the education system here in America. Mm-hmm. And I'm really wondering how that time over there has affected what you've seen here.
Well, I feel like a few things. I feel like how it's affected my how I teach here is that what I really want for my students is to open their minds and open their worlds to different possibilities and to different ways of doing things and different people to meet and different perspectives and different stories, period. Like that's my biggest goal as a teacher. And I think because I had such a great experience as a young person, having my mind like blown wide open, going, oh my God, right? I think that's mostly what I want for my students. I don't really care how well they conjugate verbs, like they don't really like that either. But, so it's like, again, I just want them to go, oh, how interesting, like through culture, through people's stories, through movies, talking to people. Now with all this technology, if they can have a pen pal in a different country, we're working on that. Some of that's kind of tricky. I just want them to really open their minds and hearts, really.
That's cool. And what I kind of got from your first part of the story, where you talked about the dress and things like that, where you see the different cultures. And to me, it's like, we already think we know. I get it. I get how the world works. I already know things. So going to another country and just seeing how they do things there, like almost unlocks different parts of the mind, like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think it could be done this way. Yeah. In the same way with a different language, it's like there's a whole nother way of communicating.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating.
Yeah, totally. A whole other way of communicating. And then it's been so cool about what, in our program, when they say beyond language, I'm like, oh, wow. So it is like, it's like you've got different languages, but then it's like beyond the words, period. And really, right. you know, but yeah. And, you know, I've done a lot of, to sort of sideways a little bit, I've done a lot of travel and, you know, because I have summers off too. And I've just been so lucky to be able to travel, to have the time in my summers. And then because I teach Spanish to travel to other countries as well and study in other countries. So I've been to a lot of places in Latin America, and I, similarly to my experience in Spain as like a 20, you know, something year old, when I've been to Colombia a number of times later on in my life, like in my 30s, and that experience also completely blew me away, because if we wanted to segue into social justice and resilience, I went first in 2004 to Colombia. I was actually living in Ecuador, and a friend of mine who was Colombian and living in Ecuador, so she invited me to her house in Bogota. So we flew from Quito to Bogota, and it was a really fascinating, you know, sort of 5 days in Bogota. But I remember thinking that there was so much more to the country that I wasn't seeing, because she sort of lives in like this the northern part of Bogota. It comes from a pretty wealthy family. And I just remember thinking, there's so much more to this country that I'm not seeing. And fast forward not even a year later, and I went on this human rights delegation to Colombia in the summer of 2005. And it blew me away like I can't even describe, but well, I can describe it. But I think what gave me so much sort of hope and faith and like a knowing that we really are resilient was seeing what I saw in this human rights delegation in Colombia. I saw so much injustice. Oh my God, so much injustice in that country. So much disparity between economic classes. So much blatant, you know, racism and classism, and it just, I mean, you know, and so much impunity for literally murder. I was I was blown away by that. And I was like, that's not fair. And then on the other side, when we were in Bogota, in the city of Medellin, and then we also went into a village in an area of Colombia called Chocó. And in those three areas, we met with different nonprofits and people that were basically working within the system to improve people's lives. And so we met with, for example, in the city of Medellin, I remember we met with a group of it was called not remembering the name, but it was basically families of the disappeared. So it was people who had family members who were disappeared, or in other words, killed by most likely paramilitary groups for standing up for human rights. So this is 2005, and things have really changed in Colombia, but there's still many human rights issues. But in 2005, there was so much paramilitary control of land. There was both leftist and right-wing illegal armed groups, guerrilla groups and paramilitary groups. And if you were Colombian standing out for human rights, you had to be really careful, because these groups obviously don't want people to be speaking, for human rights and exposing the truth of what's been going on. So, and if that happened, they would, you could be disappeared. You could be put on a list and be disappeared. And there was like a group of people then who formed this group to say, okay, we are the family of the disappeared, and we want to help people. And it was just meeting groups over and over like that blew me away, because they were helping kids in their neighborhood. They were teaching skills to 14 and 15-year-old kids. They were supporting each other. We went to this village in Chocó, this area of Colombia and it's rural in the jungle. And this group of people had basically their land had been taken away from them by force by paramilitary groups, and they killed 80 members of their community. Wow. And in I think 2001, I want to say. And because their land was so valuable, it was so valuable. And there was all these, basically a fight for their land. So they were forced off their land. They went to live basically in the equivalent of a high school gym in the closest town, which was like 2 hours away by boat. And their stories were unbelievable because they're refugees, in their own country. And they got together and they solicited help with both Colombian human rights lawyers and then I believe it was Peace Brigades International, which is based out of London. And they basically collaborated. The amazing thing is they got their land back. Like that just doesn't happen in Colombia. Like it just doesn't happen. If you're like kicked off your land, like that's it. You end up in, the shanty towns of a city. They got their land back. And then there was still paramilitary presence, but they, as a way to sort of keep them distanced, they would have these programs called accompaniment programs, where basically they would have a visitor from the US, from the Canada, from a European NGOs that would sort of just be there with them. And because the paramilitaries didn't want that kind of,
they didn't want that heat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
It was like amazing because they had their own organic farming. They had built their own school. They had, you go into their community and it has like a declaration of what they believe in. We don't believe in any armed forces, et cetera, et cetera. They were astonishing to me because, again, that's where I really, really saw clearly, oh my God, people are resilient. Like people, that is what we're made of. Like we are made of resilience and creativity, and it just blew me away. Like, so, I mean, I learned way more, from them they had, they basically, I just was there to accompany and to learn and to show solidarity. It was amazing. Yeah. So I've kind of taken a bunch of different, I kind of zigzagged around there.
That sounds insane. Like, insane. Like I didn't know that about you, that you had spent that time over there and that you were able to go into some of these areas that I've never been in. I know, Jason, I don't know, maybe you've been over there before. I don't know. But it's just really interesting because I was listening to a conversation with someone and they were telling me about how we don't understand poverty here in America like other countries understand poverty. Like poverty here in America is like really like very like not well off, but you know what I'm saying. And so it's very interesting that you're in Chicago and working in the school system and you've been through these experiences where you've seen how like these people just band together. And I don't know if y'all remember Michael telling a story. It might not have been Michael, but somebody telling a story about there's a place where the women in the city or that town said, hey, we don't want drug dealers in our town anymore. So they went and they like talked to the police and they were like, hey, if you don't make us testify, we'll make sure you can get all the drug dealers and all that stuff out of the town. And from my understanding, they are still in a drug-free town. Like there's not that in their area.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in regards to that? Like, that resilience, that ability to come together when it comes to the social justice topic here in America right now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, I think that's kind of what people do. I think it's kind of human nature to that creativity comes pouring out, particularly, this is my opinion, but particularly when there is a crisis situation, and maybe, and I don't know what happens. I think you just sort of like are so in it that maybe your thinking drops and you come up with amazing solutions. I mean, I feel like I've seen it over and over and over again. And so a couple things here, I think I've never seen, and I'd love to know, what you guys think, but here right now in this moment, I've never seen such solidarity, and I hope it stays. I hope it's sustained. But it's like in a moment, in like for whatever reason, in like such a short amount of time, it's like boom, and then you've got this like domino and ripple effect of like businesses, supporting Black Lives Matter, power structures within the businesses changing, Netflix saying, here's some documentaries to educate yourself, people going reading books saying, I want to educate and see what's going on. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I think it's amazing. I'm hopeful that it sustains and policies change and things. I'm really hopeful. I think it's amazing what humans can do, together, particularly, to make change.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's almost like getting the wave started at a sporting event, right? That's the hardest part. Once there's some activity, it's in people's awareness, like they want to be part of it. So just getting the momentum going. So if we can keep the momentum going, that would be so cool. Huge.
What
yeah.
Oh, go ahead, JJ.
No, I was just going to say that's a cool analogy. No, go ahead.
No, I love that analogy. And Jason, you can always come in with the heat with those analogies, to be honest with you. But what I was thinking about in that moment was just how, like, a lot of us did not think that the younger generation had this in them to do. That makes any sense. And what I mean is not just to go out in the streets and protest, because that is a thing. But like you're saying, like, Rogue Fitness was a big sponsor of the CrossFit Games. And the CrossFit CEO said some crazy stuff. And, well, actually, he said, instead of COVID-19, he called it, anyway, something stupid. And Rogue, all the major sponsors were like, we're not calling it CrossFit anymore. Like, a lot of the CrossFit affiliates right now are saying we're not going to be CrossFit affiliates unless something changes at the top. And I've never seen it happen where, like, I've got so many people, like, on my social media that would not even be saying this kind of stuff. There's Black Swan Yoga, like, so many different places are just like, hey, this may have been a thing in the past, and now that you're showing us that this is a thing, let's go ahead and end this.
Yeah.
But what I'm loving the most is a lot of people trying to fight for not just Black rights, but all rights, right? So if we really, like, scale it back and we say, hey, we are all the same. We are all people. We are all humans. And some aliens came from outer space and said, okay, it's us versus y'all. Like, it won't be, hey, you're Black, I'm white, you're gay, you're lesbian. It'd be like, we all need to get together to go fight them. And so what I would really hope from not just our conversation, but the conversations that they're really sparking up, is that we look at this as, let's not have to come back to the table for human rights ever again. And I was wondering if y'all saw anything in that, because this is something new for me, something fresh for me.
Well, just one thing I'll say about that is, like, when it is the aliens against us, which most likely, in my estimation, it would be us against the aliens. We probably would start the stuff. The aliens, they probably didn't want to fight, where we thought it was necessary. But just seeing it as separate selves, right? At that point, it's us against them, but it's us as a whole. And we don't see that right now because we don't see the other us. So right now we have to, a lot of people see it as, okay, there's us, there's them, and then there's them, and then there's them. But if we could see it as it's just all us, right? That the connection between all of us, that we're all made of the same stuff, the oneness of it, I think a lot of that would solve a few things.
Yeah, I think that as a teacher, I would love to see, and I'm sort of in this, what Jason's talking about, that education of how, what is thought, what is feeling, getting more into sort of understanding that, the resilience, really seeing the inside out nature, because I think that would alleviate so many problems out in the world. So, because I just do, to your point. And I think also if you think, which I think the majority culture does, that we live in an outside in world, and I get I get it, then we are going to create sort of groups and us and divisiveness and us versus them. And so I think, yes, stripping it back. I mean, I think that piece of a conversation is what is often missing in social change, in social justice, in any kind of change, is in experiencing the oneness. And so it's like, to me, I see it as like there's externals, there's definitely injustices, for sure. There's systemic injustices, systemic racism, and systemic, I mean, oh my God, absolutely. So that's like exposing that and being aware of that, I think, is so important, and knowing that. And then I also think more on the solution side is what you're talking about, really, truly, explicitly talking about our resilience and our oneness, and seeing that and feeling that. Because if you're really feeling that and seeing that, why would you want to hurt somebody?
Let me step in right there for a second, and just ask the, like, we all know what we mean by inside out, outside in. Would you go into a little bit about what you mean by the inside out versus outside in nature of life?
Go ahead, Jason. Take it away.
You know, I just put a new page on my website, and and the title is Already Knowing, right? And so it's being in the unknown. So if I speak from what I know, how could I learn from that? And you are our guest. So if you want me to go there, I can, but I would really love to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
Are you
right.
up for that?
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to try to make this as clear and clean as possible. So inside out understanding is saying that how we experience the world is an internal experience, and it's happening from thought in the moment, the thoughts that are passing through us in the moment. So whatever those thoughts look like, some of them we're really aware of, some of them we're not aware of. They can be, oh my God, all types of thinking that we can't control. We can participate in, but we can't control. But to me, it's like the visual is like thought is passing through. And as it passes through, we feel whatever the heck is going on, we feel, and it's brought to life through our senses by awareness. So if I'm thinking about my mom, you know, I can see her. I start to get sad because my mom has dementia. So I can start to feel sad because I'm thinking about her in the nursing home right now. And so I can feel that thinking that's happening. I'm not going to be thinking about, now I'm going back into, talking to you guys, and I'm not thinking about her anymore. So my feelings are changing. So that's this inside out, which is how we experience everything. And outside in is I guess a belief that the external world or circumstances can make us feel a certain way. Like they have the power to make us feel a certain way. And I always want to say, but, because I know what I heard and what I think a lot of people hear is, well, if someone's being really, does that mean you just have to be a doormat and put up with people's bad behavior and when they're treating you like shit? No. And it absolutely not, right? And it doesn't mean that person's behavior, in my words, is okay, or that I'm going to allow it. But it's not. It's the thinking that's going through me with that situation that's creating my feeling. And no matter what the circumstance is, my thinking, depending on what thinking is going through me at the time, is what's really creating my feeling, not the circumstance itself. And that allows so much more understanding of what the heck, where our feelings are coming from. And that understanding can really allow us, or it allows me to participate a little bit more. First of all, have a sense of relief, knowing that I know where my feelings are coming from. It's like, oh, okay, I see how it works. And then number two, there's an element of participation. So, if the thinking that, we can't control our thinking, it's coming in and it's happening 24/7 until the day we die. But in my words, there's a little bit of participation. So if I'm thinking about something, or if I'm looped in something that is that I don't want to be looped into, there's a certain amount of participation that I can have in that. I might say, you know what, I don't want to think about this right now. Number one. Number two, if I can't, I can also at least understand what's going on. I am like in this shitty feel right now. I know where it's coming from. And for me, there's quite a bit more distance between that personal narration and that story. I know that beyond that narration also is like the real me that can't be touched, that can't be talking about resilience and creativity, that can't be hurt. I might feel hurt, but beyond those feelings is the juice, the cool stuff that we all have, no matter what.
Yeah. I love that you did it as good a job as anybody.
Thanks.
Like, I mean, how do you explain how reality works, right? I mean, but what you're saying to me is kind of sort of when we start talking about the social justice conversation, what's going on, like, yes, like something happens in the world, say Dave Chappelle puts out a comedy special called 846. I believe that's what it's called. And that upset some people, and other people made it really happy, and other people it didn't affect at all. And that's because each person on the inside, like what they thought about what Dave Chappelle put out, that affected them differently. So Dave Chappelle didn't change his words for me to hear it, for you to hear it, for Jason to hear it. But what ends up happening is because of what I have boiling up or not inside of me, like that's what I see in what they say. So if I'm out, you know, yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And your experience of, let's say you're watching that, your experience of that can be and probably will be different at different times, depending on what's going on in your mind.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, that I really like that example. I think there's the individual experience, right? You know, I'm likely to have an experience of it, you know, in some form, but that form also shifts, right? Like JJ, you were saying about how depending on if I got sleep that day, or depending on my ride home from work, and you know, I was so irritated because somebody did this or that, and now I'm watching this and like it's the relief I needed or whatever. Just seeing that not only is it different for each person based on how they grew up and the experiences that they've had and what they believe to be true, but it's also different for us on a Tuesday, you know, like how random is that?
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Well, and the piece that I love too is like, we don't have to police our thoughts, you know. And the whole, you know, we know what kind of quality, if you want to give it a quality of thinking, that we have depending on how we feel. So if I'm feeling and also what was so helpful for me is if I'm feeling in a low mood, I know that that my thoughts are just low. And it doesn't mean anything about me, number one. Number two, it's going to change. Like I will get new thinking in at some point. And so for me, it's like whenever that happens, it's not really up to me anyway, but I will get new thinking and new solutions and new creativity and new ideas, particularly if I know that it's happening, you know, it's how the system works.
So I love the opportunity with this stuff to always, like, in any moment, see what's going on in my life right now, and to be able to use that, right? Because I see it. So today, son woke up. This is the thing in my house, right? Kids waking up early. Woke up at 11 o'clock last night. Not a big deal. Like I literally have twins, so one hand's on each one of their beds because they like are across from each other. Wife was watching on the the monitor, She's like, you looked almost like you were in a Zen position there. Like I should have took a picture or something. So I was like, she's like, you were in there for 45 minutes. I said, what? I guess anyway. So son wakes up 5 a.m. I'm up anyway. So I'm like, all right, let's go lay on the couch together. He sleeps till 6. So I'm like, you want to go find your mom now? Because I'm like, I don't know what else to do with you. So he's tired essentially, and it's 7:45, 8 o'clock here. And I know we have something to do at 9 o'clock. And I'm like, hey, I probably should get my yoga in before. And so he starts going off. Like, just he's tired. And before I would look at that and be like, what's wrong with that kid? He knows I got things to do. Because of this, I'm like, he's tired. He needs to chill. I go outside, I do my yoga in a different spot than I've ever done it before. And so many things came to me fresh and new in my yoga session today that normally don't. Like, so I get up off the mat and I'm in a different space, a completely different space. And when I walk back in the house, he's still crying. Like, wife's like, he hadn't been doing that the whole time. I'm like, whatever. But I walk back in and I'm just like in a different space. So his crying means a different thing to me. Like I see her stressed a little bit about him crying. Like that's cool. My daughter is just like, la, 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 la. So, I mean, that's something to be thankful for, right? And so like, you're so right. Every time we look at this from like when we know where our experience of life is coming from. And again, if any of you are like, hey, this is some crazy talk, all three of us are coaches. So like, if you would like to sit down with one of us and say, what were you talking about?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to hit us all up. We will link that later in the bio and all that other stuff. But more specifically, when we understand how life works, like thinking comes, it goes. I go outside, I do yoga. I come back inside. The world looked different.
Yeah.
And everything's the same.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah. I just, especially that last line that you said, the world looked different, but everything's the same. It's like, how cool is that we can have inside, like, depending on what's going on inside, like our like world glasses change, you know?
Yeah. I was thinking earlier, as you were describing the inside out nature, is like, you know, hitting up Golden Corral, you know, you don't really have a choice of what's out there, right? The chicken's there, whatever's there is there, but you get to choose what you pay attention to, right? And it's that we create our indigestion later, or we don't, right? You know, we don't control what thoughts come into our head. It's just like, damn, why am I thinking that? I mean, wow, what a jerk I am for having that thought. But we didn't create the thought. But we don't have to pay attention to it. We don't have to pick it up. We don't have to do anything with it. If we see that it's not helpful, this is not a food that really sits right with me, then I'm not going to mess with it. And that is the experience. That's how we can create our experience of life.
Yeah. So cool. Yeah. That participatory experience. Yeah, that's so cool.
So that was awesome. But seriously, in regards, and I'm just going to bring it back to the social justice issue for a second.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important to state again, and maybe we can fly off a little bit on this a little bit. But if we do this right as a society this time, the United States could be the beacon of what it's like to bring everybody and say, hey, look, we are one country. Here we are. Boom. Yeah. And we could, again, be world leaders. And I mean, that's not what it's about is, hey, let's be world leaders. But yeah, what are y'all's thoughts on that before we get out of here?
I think it's super exciting. I mean, I think that right now that could be a huge catalyst moment for so much change on a personal level and like a community level and a global level. And like could potentially, like I love the idea. And I think that I can't even fathom what positive change could happen with the inside out understanding, honestly, because if people are coming from, if their come from is of love and understanding, the whole world is going to look different. I think oh my God, like it's exciting to me. I want to be part of it. You know, I think everybody recognizes and already knows this anyway. So to talk about this would literally be I feel like we're in this like waking up moment anyway, I hope, and I think. So, and I think people, when they understand themselves better, they're going to be nicer. They're going to be, you know, they're going to be more productive. They're going to want to be more collaborative. They're going to be more creative. And I think that ripple effect could be enormous.
This just came to mind, but this is kind of like quitting smoking cigarettes or anything really. And what I mean is like, so 200 years ago, let's say, we were like, hey, we don't want slavery anymore. That's not when that happened, but right.
Yeah.
And so every time we have this discussion, Martin Luther King was one of those times, we move a little closer to the goal. And then like we think we're so far removed from it, but all of the things that we did to get to that point are very still valuable as we move forward. And it looks to me like here's another one of those those opportunities where we're like, hey, it's time to quit. Not cold turkey either, but we need to quit. And that's what I love about this conversation, is because the more each and every one of us and everybody that out there that listens to this, we go out there and we're having these conversations with our friends, having these conversations with our loved ones. And what I mean is that racist joke that was at the water cooler before, instead you say something versus having that whatever race that person was. So whether it's a Mexican joke or a black joke or a gay joke, instead of being like, oh yeah, man, that's funny, or maybe not even laughing, because I know we've had that conversation. Sometimes you just don't laugh at all.
Yeah.
Maybe now's the time to say something.
Yeah. I think that would be incredibly powerful. And again, like if you're feeling secure in yourself, you're not going to laugh at somebody else's expense. I don't think.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, you know, it's coming to mind what based on both what you both said is it's about the upstream, right? Like we can solve I need to talk to Joe about what he said at the water cooler. I need to do this with my dad. He always says this type of stuff, right? We got to go fix a million things, right? But if we take it upstream, and I'm thinking of it like with health. Okay, I need to quit smoking. I probably should run. I need to fix my food because I'm really eating like crap. Like there's a lot of things to fix. But if we go upstream and look at it from a health level and have a different understanding about health, all those things are affected, right? It's like downstream. It's like pollution. You know, if we stop dumping the pollution upstream, everything downstream is now positively affected. So I mean, for me, at least with social justice, that's what it sounds like that's the conversation that we're having right here, right? If people can look at themselves and change themselves, everything shifts, you know? It's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. This has been a great conversation. Thank y'all both for all your input. Jason, it feels like you've seen things fresh and new since the last time we talked last week. And JJ, like, to know that we have people in the school system just like yourself going out there and really trying to do what's best for those students, like that's all we can ask for. So I want to personally thank you, and I'm sure there's people out there that want to thank you as well.
Thank you. That's so nice. It's been lovely to talk to you guys.
Yeah,
thanks
good to get to know you.
Yeah.
And I think I just want to say too, like that is the power of people just having conversations with other people, right? Mm-hmm. Like anything new that I'm seeing today is part of the recipe, right? You guys joined the conversation. I joined the conversation. We're all putting things in, and now we get to see fresh new things. And really, that's what we offer with people with coaching. It's like, let's show up. Let's just compare notes on what it looks like to us. And we're both going to see fresh and new. And like, that's how lives shift. I mean, it's been, it's just since January when we joined the program and really what we've been learning. Like, it's crazy to see how life can be so, I want to say better, but just so much cleaner almost. Less pollution.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so cool. Yay, let's stay in conversation.
And we
Yeah.
will. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. See you guys.
Bye.